the best definition of wolf habitat. It's anywhere where there is anything to eat, from garbage to a moose, and where the animal is not shot. Be serious and be honest to yourself. It's because you like them and you love them. So the ethical reason to have wolves back, in my opinion, is much, much stronger than an ecological reason. There is a book called Yellowstone Wolves. It's one of the most beautiful books on wolves ever written. We will find a chapter about this story of the ecosystem impact and roles and all that. And the authors say, well, we don't really know what's going on.
Welcome to Saving the World from Bad Ideas. I'm Mark Lynas, and I've had a few bad ideas in my time. I used to go out in the nighttime to destroy GMO crops, and I also opposed nuclear power. But then when I looked at the science, I found I got it wrong. Oops! I've learned the hard way that none of us are right all the time. So now I'm here to challenge the assumptions that we all too often take for granted, because the future depends on us getting it right. Luigi Boitani, welcome to the podcast. The theme that we always have is saving the world from bad ideas. And I thought that as an expert on large carnivores, I thought the bad idea you could be saving the world from is that wolves and humans can't coexist, which is a very sort of widely held view. And I'm hoping you'll take us through why that's wrong, assuming you think that it is wrong. But just tell us a bit about the work you've done through your career with wolves, and tell us a bit about what the situation is with wolves in Europe and North America, how many there are, whether they're increasing, decreasing, and their kind of broader conservation status.
Well, that's a lot of questions. Well, I started being interested in wolves in 1971 when I did my first estimate of wolf population in Italy. And at that time, there were very few wolves left. We came up with an estimate of about 100, 150 animals only. In the beginning, that was supposed to be a short-term consultancy, just a couple of months or 3 months for estimating these wolves, and it turned out to be a life job. I never stopped. I keep working on wolves. I'm chairing the Large Carnivore Initiative for Europe, which is a group of experts from of the Species Survival Commission of the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature. And with this group of 57 experts, we try to monitor the status and the problems of wolf and wolf coexistence with humans in Europe. Whatever I'm going to say is actually the product of many years of collaboration among this group of experts. We enjoy a good and privileged relationship with the European Commission in terms of providing them with data, technical data, technical information, whatever support is needed to implement a management plan in Europe. I've been working a little bit on wolves and somewhere else, and then North America, but mostly as a helper, let's say, so to some of my friends and colleagues working on wolves there. The situation of wolves in Europe is improving. It's definitely better than in the past. There are many, many more wolves than used to be in just a few decades ago. The overall estimate in Europe is about 23,000 wolves. I don't know why people are obsessed by numbers. When you give a talk about wolves, the first question is how many there are. And usually my answer is, why are you interested? Well, what's the difference for you if I say 20 or 30,000 or 50,000? Would you ever make the same question to find out how many foxes you have in Europe? No, that would be silly. Well, it's equally silly for wolves. But nevertheless, there are some...
why does that? But tell us why that happens, because there's some psychology going on there, isn't there, about wolves? What does it tell us about how people see them?
Yeah, it's probably because wolves are... well, that's a long story, in my opinion. Wolves are very close to dogs. I should say the other way around, of course. But so people look at wolves like, their companion, like animals that are here in our backyard. And so that's why you want to know how many. But also, people have their mind already taken by prejudice about wolves. And And so knowing how many somehow helps in defining the dimension of those problems, even though people have no idea what's the difference between 20 and 30,000 wolves in terms of the ecology, in terms of depredation on livestock, in terms of everything else. So anyway, these 23,000 are not distributed evenly across Europe. There are quite a few in Fennoscandia. But the main,
Where's Fennoscandia? That's Finland.
well, in Sweden, mostly in Sweden, with very few in Norway, very few, basically because Norway has a policy in place decided by the parliament of having only a few animals. Norway decided to have, if I'm not wrong, something like 5 or 6 or 7 packs only. All the rest is going to be eliminated. Some 400 in Sweden. I'm not giving you the numbers for each European countries, but basically the main populations are in Iberia, between Spain and Portugal. Italy has quite a few. We estimate about 4,000 wolves here. And then big numbers are in the Alps, going from France all across the Alps into Slovenia. Big numbers in Romania, Bulgaria, the Dinaric area in general. And then again, 1,000 in Poland. A good number and increasing in Germany. And this is very important because this Central European population is actually expanding fast toward west. At the moment, there are 9 packs in the Netherlands, for example, the places you would never say that, that is suitable for wolves. And here comes another a very important point. People immediately ask, but do we still have a habitat for wolves? Then when I ask, what is, in your opinion, a wolf habitat? Nobody has an answer. People may answer, wolves live in a forest. Now, they don't live in forests because wolves chase animals by running after them. You can't do that kind of chase in a forest. Wolves live in open space. They may retreat in a forest, but they basically need open areas where they can hunt. But having said that, I always recall the best definition of a wolf habitat that was given by a friend of mine, a wolf biologist in North America. And it's anywhere where there is anything to eat, from garbage to a moose, and where the animal is not shot. That's a wolf habitat.
Wow. It's
Which
a really broad definition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very bold. But it basically means that you can find a wolf tomorrow morning anywhere in Europe. And that's normal.
So I've heard that there's wolves in every European country, or at least on the continent. We'll get to the UK later maybe. But is that true? Are they permanent populations or are they moving around, or how does it work?
No. There is a permanent population now. As I said, there are very few in the Netherlands and Belgium and in Denmark, of course. So this country depends on the bigger population that is in Germany. But that's why we, at the Large Carnivore Initiative, we like to talk of subpopulations. And so we have one Iberian population in Spain and Portugal. Then we have one Italian population going from southern Italy up to the northern part of the Apennines. Then we have an Alpine population. And then we have a Central European population that goes from Poland, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium. But of course, wolves do disperse over long, long distances. When a young wolf is about 2 years old, he leaves the family looking for a new partner, a new territory. And in this dispersal movement can be very long. One of the best data we got 2 years ago was of a wolf marked by a radio collar in southern Switzerland and killed by a poacher in Slovakia, some 2,000 kilometers. So, it's very, it's an artifact of speaking of subpopulation, because basically there is only one big population in Europe, and that's it.
Right. So there's no genetic distinctions between
They are all
subpopulations.
connected. They are all connected, definitely.
Mm.
See, yeah, they have been separated for a long time. So genetically you can distinguish an Italian wolf from a Spanish one and from others, but it really doesn't make much of a difference.
Yeah. I mean, I love wolves in principle, like most people probably do. I've never seen one in the wild. Well, I've never seen a live one in the wild. I saw a dead one once when I was with some native Alaskans, and they'd shot this wolf, and the head was there in the doorway, and it was fairly recently killed, but that was the only time I've ever come close to a real wolf, not a real live wolf. But can you, if you worked on this for a long time, you must have had some interesting encounters. Can you tell us a story or two about wolf encounters? No?
Many, many, many encounters. The very first one was right at the beginning of my work in central Italy, and I was one evening in the mountains. I was living in a small cabin, and I was going back to my home, and then suddenly I heard this beautiful howl coming from a nearby valley, and I had never seen a live wolf in the wild yet. And so when I heard this howl, I walked very, very slowly over the ridge near the road, and just peeked out of this ridge, looking down, and there was a pack of 6 wolves playing and running and howling and very happy. And that was my first meeting with the wild wolves. I will never forget that, of course. But later on, I had the opportunity to go, for example, to Ellesmere Island with my friend Dave Meach in North America, where he had been studying a pack of animals that were not afraid of humans. So he had been working on them for many years, and he continued. By the way, there is a book coming out on this experience. It's beautiful. And so I had the chance to stay for a month and a half in the tundra of Ellesmere Island at a distance of 2 meters from a pack of wolves, and going chasing with them and living with them and watching them all the time. And it's fantastic. They were running free, and we were running with the quads over the tundra to keep them, never coming out of the quads, because we didn't want the animals to learn that humans have 2 legs and can walk on their own. So for them, humans are on a quad.
Well, humans have sleds, right? They don't have legs, right?
No, in fact. Oh, it was fantastic. But then I've seen wolves many, many times throughout this 50 years of work. Yeah.
And how do you feel about them? How do you respond to them emotionally? Like, for me, they're just so kind of, it's difficult not to have come into cliche, but they're so sort of majestic and just beautiful creatures. I would love to hear a wolf howl, because for me that means that the landscape is sort of qualitatively different in a kind of wilderness sense from a purely human-dominated landscape. So there's something that wolves have about them. Do you feel this?
Absolutely. They are very, very charismatic, and one of the reasons, personally believe, one of the reasons why they are so charismatic is that they are so similar to humans in many respects. Sometimes, jokingly, I said, I can talk for 2 hours, and you would never know if I'm talking of humans or wolves. I can use the same word, the same concept. They live in family, they have a territory, they fight each other, they have a hierarchy, they have all sorts of things. I can talk really the same thing. And this is one of the reasons why humans feel so much attached to wolves, because they can be a competitor, but they can also be an example. Most people think that humans have been always afraid and hating wolves. That's really wrong. There is probably the major part of humanity has a positive view of wolves. For all the human societies that were warriors, wolves are an example, are not something you hate. You want to be like a wolf because you see how successful they are in the hunt.
And there's all these mythologies, like the foundation of Rome, the Romulus and Remus myth. I mean, these were babies who were thrown out by their human mother. I can't remember why, but anyway, they were raised by a she-wolf, right? They were suckled by a she-wolf, and then that's how they survived. And there's several variations of those myths, aren't there? So there is something, you wouldn't get that for a bear or something. So there's something special about wolves with humans.
Exactly. But I mean, most of the North American Indians were positive toward the wolves. The Eskimos are positive. All the nomadic culture of Central Asia had a positive. Genghis Khan is the son of a wolf, and so you find the wolf always there when you speak of warriors culture.
So basically all human societies have felt the charisma of the wolf, like over time, and have built it into their myths and their religious and belief systems and so on.
Even if you fight them, you still honor them and respect them. Just to give you an example, I mean, in Greece, they had bounties on wolves already in the 6th century before Christ, so long time ago, and yet Apollo is the god of sun. And the god of sun is a positive god, is not negative. And Apollo had a pack of wolves servicing him. So, the wolf is associated with a positive image, a positive deity. And so there is this ambiguity in certain culture. And wolves are not always negative at all.
So did the negative thing emerge in the last few centuries then? I mean, I'm thinking of, I don't know, without being too flippant, we've got nursery rhymes, we've got Little Red Riding Hood, the Three Little Pigs. I mean, there's always the big bad wolf, right? So when did it become this thing which was so hated as opposed to being so revered?
Well, the wolf became a real nuisance when humans settled down with agriculture and had their livestock. Then, of course, the fight and the damage, the conflict can be very high. And so the people tried to get rid of the wolves as much as possible. Wolves were exterminated, for example, in England back in 16th century, long time ago. They managed to get rid of wolves by cutting down all the forest. So that was a very easy way. Gradually, all across Europe, wolves were exterminated. The last wolf in the Alps was 1920. They never disappeared from central Italy, from the central Spain, and from Greece, northern Greece, and the Balkan, because the traditional way of pastoralism found a compromise between keeping sheep and keeping some wolves. And so they managed not to exterminate everything. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So have wolves reintroduced themselves in Europe, or have there been reintroduction programs? I mean, how come the wolf is now so resurgent across so many different countries after having been nearly completely exterminated?
There's been not a single wolf reintroduced in Europe. I mean, it must be stressed because people sometimes believe that they are, so many now because they have been reintroduced. No, there has been a wolf reintroduction in North America, in the Yellowstone only. That's it. In the expansion of wolves throughout Europe is due to the biology of wolves. They can increase very quickly. A population of wolves can increase up to 30% a year. They are very flexible. That means in their ecology is very adaptable. They can eat everything. And as long as they are not killed, they just reproduce and expand. And that's what happened throughout most of Europe. So it's quite normal what's happening. And also, as I said before, their dispersal ability allow them to colonize distant areas fairly quickly.
in my view, it's a shame that wolves can't swim, because then we'd have them back in England. I mean, as you say, it was Scotland, I think, was the last place a wolf was killed, not England. I mean, there would have been even earlier there. But if they can live in Belgium and they can live in the Netherlands, I mean, they're more densely populated than the United Kingdom. We've got, I would have thought, habitat to support wolves, but it's such a politically toxic thing. I don't think even the most fervent rewilding advocates dare to suggest that wolves should be intentionally brought back. But, what's your view of this from a European perspective?
No. My very first conference on wolf reintroduction in Scotland was in 1978. And then I've been invited several times after that, keep discussing. Yes, we need wolves. There are so many deer in Scotland, we need wolves. Yes, you have many deer, but you also have many sheep. So, it depends. And you forget that, as I said before, wolves can disperse over long distances. You release a wolf in Scotland, and in a few years, very few years, you may have wolves down to in the outskirts of London. Then I want to see the British public opinion discussing about culling wolves. That would be a nightmare. It would be a wonderful experiment in sociology and psychology, but biologically speaking, it would be trivial. I mean, you can certainly release them and they will have a lot of food in UK. No problem.
So should we do it?
No.
Why not? Why not?
Because then you have to kill many of them.
Why do we have to? Why can't we just let them live?
Because the population would increase, and you don't want to have wolves in Hyde Park, really.
I don't know. Why not? I mean, they're not. It's not like they're actually a danger. I mean, well, tell me, are they significant danger to humans, or is it about livestock and stuff?
No, they basically depredate on livestock. We don't have a case of wolf attack on humans in Europe in the last 40 years, 50 years. But they can. If they learn to do that, they could do that. And so you better be careful. If you still have few wolves and a lot of people, then the chance of an attack are quite low. But if you have many wolves in a very urbanized area, I would not exclude that one day a wolf would try to taste a little kid, for example. And you don't want to risk that. And if you ask me, I'm happy to have wolves around my house, sure, of course. But then, we are in a democracy. Let's see the majority of people, what do they feel? I don't think it would be a wise idea to have wolves released in UK unless there is a real national pact of an experiment that has to be done in this and this and this way, with already in place the measure to be taken in case something happens, in case the wolves are too many, in case the conflicts are too many, and so on and on and on.
Well, I don't know. With We Planet, we're very, very keen on rewilding, and I'd love to make a proposal for reintroducing wolves in the UK with your guidance about how to do that, to at least get the conversation going and figure out how we can move public opinion, because I don't see why this incredible creature should be absent forever. Maybe, I mean, for me, I always believed or assumed that you couldn't have proper rewilding without all the different trophic levels, all the different levels of like predator and prey. Is that true? I mean, can you have ecosystems which are properly kind of constituted and, able to sustain themselves without the top carnivore like a wolf?
Well, there are many areas of the world where wolves never existed, and you have beautiful ecosystem even there. Ecosystem adapts. And of course, we tend to think, okay, the wolf was part of this ecosystem. Now there is no wolf, so this ecosystem is actually weak or well, that's not necessarily true. Large areas of Europe have been without wolves for a couple of centuries. They have not collapsed ecologically. I mean, the UK is ecologically viable. It's a nice landscape. You have a lot of predators. You have you cannot say that UK is ecologically finished at all. So you don't need wolves. There may be a place for wolves, sure. And the very reason why you want to have wolves, be serious and be honest to yourself, is because you like them and you love them. So the ethical reason to have wolves back in my opinion, is much, much stronger than an ecological reason. There is no reason to say, wolves have a sanitary effect by killing the sick and weak animals. Okay, that's true in certain areas. But there is no reason to say, for example, wolves are actually regulating their prey population. This is not true at all. We have been flooded in the last few years by stories about Yellowstone, this beautiful Yellowstone model. Well, the return of the wolves changed the landscape, changed the ecosystem, and
Well, tell us that story from the beginning, because it is a bit of a conservation meme. I've seen it retold many times, but listeners may not know it. So tell us what the story was and actually what the truth is scientifically.
Well, I started from the last of your question. There is a book called Yellowstone Wolves, written by the people who have been working on wolves for the past 25 years. It's one of the most beautiful book on wolves ever written. You look at that and you will find a chapter about this story of the ecosystem impact and roles and all that. And if you read that chapter, in the end, you understand that the authors say, well, we don't really know what's going on. So I think it's totally premature to draw conclusion on the positive role of wolves. There are so many variables in that stories that have not been taken in account. For example, the role of humans, the role of hunters around the national park, all these other aspects that, alternative hypotheses on the ways the ecosystem evolved. To make the story very short, certainly wolves have a role, but not necessarily this role is so essential to keep the ecosystem in good conditions.
But I mean, surely if you don't have the original Yellowstone story, as I understand it, was that the herbivore populations, was it elk or something else? I can't remember, were eating all the willows, and that was kind of stopping the landscape from having reforestation or whatever it was. And then they bring in the wolves as a reintroduction, and that kills off enough of the elk that it means that the trees can grow again. And that's sort of an idea, I think, which has become used more widely as well for reforestation and kind of rewilding. But if it turns out not to be true, then...
Well, for example, when after the first story was told in the way you just summarized, another study came up very nicely who showed that actually there was a very, very important role of the hunters who killed the elks and moved the elks away and reduced the number of elks. So it was not the wolf that did the job, but was the hunters.
I think the really critical point here is that utilitarian arguments for species reintroductions, actually, they're advanced a lot, including by scientists, because they think that they need to win the argument on utilitarian grounds, whereas actually these decisions are made at a much more emotional level. As you said, absolutely. I want the wolf back because I love wolves. I don't care whether they are going to be a net benefit in terms of tourism to the UK economy or some such kind of metric. So maybe it would just be better if we were all honest about that, eh?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I've been preaching this for decades. I'm very happy to hear that from you. Absolutely agree. 100%. Let's forget about all the technical, mechanistic justification. Let's say that we want wolves around because they are beautiful animals. Fantastic.
Actually, I also kind of believe this for other kind of biodiversity issues as well, in that I often find the arguments for biodiversity conservation underwhelming in the way that they're put in terms of ecosystem function and stuff like that. Even for like the sixth mass extinction, I think the planet could survive and could continue to flourish in terms of its human population with half of the species that we've got now. That's probably a bit sad, and it's not a world that I want to see, but I think it's probably disingenuous for scientists and conservationists to make the argument that humans can't survive if species don't survive alongside us, and it's something else that's going on. I mean, you're on the IUCN, so tell me what I should be thinking on this.
No, the IUCN has been proposing for ages a view of nature that is compatible with human progress. When we come to large carnivore and specifically to wolves, we like to speak of coexistence, and so we use this word. But actually, very few people analyze what coexistence means. As you say, they are in the public opinion they are too extreme, especially when we speak of wolves. The public opinion is just two opposing blocks, all in favor or all against. It's very difficult to find the people in between. So, but what coexistence mean? Mean compromise. The word coexistence means compromise. Compromise means that both parties give up something. And both parties in this case are humans that have to learn to tolerate a little bit of conflict and damage. And the wolves will have to take some culling, some killing. Some of the animals will have to be removed. And this should not be a taboo. But for the moment, until now, it has been a taboo for all the organization on animal welfare, protectionist, not really advanced conservation minded. And so every wolf is sacred. Let's not speak of killing any wolf. That's impossible. Coexistence means that if you release the wolf in UK and tomorrow morning a wolf managed to get into Hyde Park, you just kill it or remove it, whatever you want to call it. But you have to do that. And if you have this compromise in place and accepted by all parties, then we can have wolves everywhere.
That's quite a difficult thing to get your head around. To have wolves, we've got to kill wolves.
Yes.
I mean, the weird things happen. Like, wasn't Ursula von der Leyen's pony? She's the commission president. I think wasn't her pony killed by a wolf? And somehow now we've got wolves, the conservation status being downgraded across Europe. And maybe these two things aren't connected, but it's a bit too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit more than a coincidence. I think. And you can see that the whole process of applying for a downlisting to the Berne Convention, and now on March 7, when this will become a law, you will see all the legal procedures to change the Habitat Directive. They have all been managed by the office of the president, not by the others. So there must be either a personal interest or, let's say, politically personal interest to please farmers, to please certain sectors of the economy, by concessions of killing wolves more easily than in the past. But it's a false problem. Really, because even now that the wolves are fully protected, there are ways around legally, and you can ask derogation to kill wolves. And there is a Article 16 in the Habitat Directive that specifically talks about derogation. And France last year, under derogation, killed 250 wolves, not one, 250. So you can do that as long as you have a plan. And as long as the overall population is not threatened. And in France, you can kill 250 because you have more than 1,000.
Well, that's a quarter of the population, though, in 1 year being killed.
Yeah.
Why is that acceptable?
But the population increased by 30%. So you're actually not really reducing the numbers. So there is we can discuss that. I'm not really very, very happy with what France is doing. But there are ways around. But maybe not 250, but 200 you can do. So Italy has 4,000 wolves. Even if you kill, it will never happen, but even if you kill 500, the population from a demographic point of view, really nothing. So, so coexistence goes through these difficult choices. If you have to take in account that wolf population will increase. Are you happy to have wolves around like you have sparrows in your garden? If so, fine. But I don't think the majority of people will be happy with that.
Doesn't killing wolves affect wolf sort of society, social structure? Because the packs are very, the societies are quite complex and quite, enduring, aren't they? So tell us about how removing individuals, explain how wolves even, how they do organize themselves.
Well, wolves live in pack, and a pack is basically a family, father and mother and the pups of the year, with few left over from the previous years if they didn't want to leave the family. So basically, that's the unit. And then you have this unit has a territory, and the size of the territory depends on the amount of the resources available. So it could be from 50 square kilometer to 5,000 square kilometer where there is nothing to eat. In general, a big average of a territory size in Europe is around 200, 300 square kilometer. So that's the average size. When the population is really satura, I don't know, I can't remember the word now. When the population fill all the space, then you have all the territories, one near the other one. But most of the time, this is not the case. You have a pack here with a territory, and then another one maybe 200 kilometers away, 300 kilometers away, with void areas in between. So this is the way they live, and this is the way they manage to exploit the local resources. But wolves are actually very flexible, and they adapt to every local situation depending on the kind of prey you have, the amount of prey you have, the topography, the geography, the impact of humans, how many humans are in the area, what kind of disturbance come from this human presence, and so on. So it's very difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen. Wolves are too much adaptable to local situation, and the number of variables in the environment is so high that it's very difficult to predict will happen in few years' time.
But if you have a hunter who kills the alpha female in a pack, doesn't that make the pack fall apart or something?
Yes, this is has been shown that killing one of the pair, I hesitate to call it the alpha pair. Like normally, this is the way used to wolves are used to be called. In that case, the whole pack may dismantle, and the animal and the young disperse, and you may have the younger animals that have more problems in hunting, and so they could more easily turn to livestock, for example, and do more damage. So killing wolves for livestock is not really a good solution unless you eliminate the whole pack. But that's not very easy to do. Or you are so good as a trapper or a hunter to kill exactly the animals that you think is most responsible for killing the livestock. Sometimes this is possible. It's possible because there are some packs that learn a certain behavior, or certain animals that are more bold or active in the hunt. And so by eliminating that specific individual, you can reduce the amount of damage. But this is possible only when you have a very sophisticated research going on in the area, together with the conflict management.
Well, on conflict management, I mean, what other than killing wolves, what are some of the measures that have been taken in different places so that farmers can, still continue to keep livestock, and the conflicts can at least be reduced as far as possible?
Absolutely. The wolves and sheep, for example, in over most of the Mediterranean, have coexisted for millennia, not centuries, millennia, only using one tool, which is the guarding dog. And now these guarding dogs are, you can call them a different way, different races, but they are basically the same type. It's a mastiff, heavy, white, large, not very bright. Not really, but they don't need to be bright because they need to be. They are not afraid. Their role is to remain there when the wolves attack, and not run away and bark. They are not meant to fight the wolf at all.
But they have to stand their ground and make a lot of noise.
Exactly. They have to stand the ground and bark. By doing that, they disrupt the aggressive behavior of the wolf that is used. Expect the prey to run away, but this dog is not running away. So that's the first thing. And then by barking, they call the shepherd, and the shepherd must be nearby. The shepherd comes with a stick, with a gun, or whatever, and chase the wolf away. In this way, the system has been coexisted for centuries. Today we have that, still that. The shepherd dogs are extremely important, and we have some technical tools that helping the shepherds. For example, the electric wires, electric fence. And electric fence are extremely useful. They work very well. And the combination of two works very well. Can reduce the conflict almost to zero. Almost. Never to zero. So there remain always a small level of tolerable conflict. But that's so we go back to the concept of coexistence. As long as the damage is tolerable, a little bit, it's okay. If it's too much, no.
And if there's some level of livestock predation, are there compensation schemes that keep farmers, keep farmers happier?
Almost everywhere in Europe, there are compensation schemes. There are lots of funding made available by the European Commission for under the various agricultural chapters, and a lot of fund available not only to pay compensation but also to support the farmers with all these technical means, electric fence and guarding dogs, salaries to additional shepherds in summertime, and so on. But it must be said very clear: if you expect to find a way to coexist with wolves and still keep your livestock free-ranging, that's a beautiful recipe for disaster.
Okay.
Free-ranging livestock are not compatible.
Well, that's a problem in the UK because most of the sheep are very, very free-ranging across large areas of the uplands.
Because you don't have predators, so of course you can afford that.
Of course. What are some of the other disturbances that can seriously affect wolves? I'm thinking of things like border fences. I read that there was a fence that's now been built between the Baltic states and the Russian Federation at Kaliningrad. These presumably split populations, fragment habitats. I mean, how serious is that as an issue?
Well, in certain areas, these fences are being built very rapidly to keep people away. But don't forget that another kind of fence is actually increasing and crisscrossing Europe very quickly, and are fences to keep away the swine fever. And they are really cutting population very, very badly, even in Central Europe, like Germany, for example, and the Netherlands, and so on. France.
What do these look like? I didn't know about swine fever fences.
Oh yeah, they are meant to keep the wild boar away, and so they are built for that.
And these are actually over large distances now.
Oh yeah, very large distance over long distances. It's a very, very dangerous situation. These fences are building up very rapidly. They of course disrupt also the wolf population. But even the fences built to keep humans away sometimes are really awful, like the big one being built between Belarus and Poland. Finland is actually considering a big fence with Russia, but the border is so huge that they will never be able to make it all. But certainly they are trying their best. And several hundred kilometers have already been completed. Yeah.
And what this has presumably had negative impacts on wolves and maybe other species as well.
Certainly. And for wolves, this is very bad because, of course, you cut the continuity and the possibility of genetic exchanges with populations nearby. And so, by Finland, for example, if they effectively seal the country against Russia, well, there are very few wolves in Finland, only 100, 150 left, and by themselves, they will not last. Genetically, it's too small.
Well, I'm not sure if fence is going to keep the Russians out if it comes to that. So maybe that's not even the right approach. But what about other kinds of human intrusion? Like, I mean, I saw a paper about wind farms potentially having an effect on wolf sort of habitat. Do you know of any science on this?
No.
Okay.
Never heard of that.
Okay.
And it's hard to imagine that wind farms could have an impact, on wolves.
Yeah, because they're high enough up, presumably, that they don't, wolves can go right to the base of a wind turbine and it wouldn't harm it. So what would the problem be? Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's reassuring. That is good to know. What's the sort of ideal outcome? I mean, forget about politics. Well, I guess you can never forget about politics in conservation, but still, like, what's your kind of wolf-human utopia like? It's not probably like how Europe looks at the moment or even North America, but right, what's the best we can aim for, perhaps?
No, it's a dream. It's a dream to find a lasting and accepted compromise. For the time being, we just keep living in a swinging pendulum, all against the wolf, eradication, all in favor, total protection. Both are actually a recipe for disaster. Look at what happened in North America a couple of years. Last year, the state of Idaho, made a law to kill 90% of the wolf population. 90. That's not a compromise. That's just. Or take Switzerland, one of the richest country in the world. Or take Norway, one of the countries that sell themselves as one of the greenest country in the world. And they decide in a parliamentary decision that all of Norway cannot have more than a handful of packs of wolves. Is that something that makes me lose any faith in human rationality? I mean, Switzerland, from a day to the other, they decided to eradicate all the wolves, kill them all, with the exceptions of few packs that are transboundary, so that technically the wolves do not belong only to Switzerland, but also to the neighboring countries. With that exception, they've been killing everything with night equipment, by going into the den and killing the pups. The most awful thing that we have been, reading in books of 2 centuries ago, and they're doing now. And it's just, and this is from Switzerland, who then, sell themselves with the image of the cow on the grass, eating, little flowers and producing beautiful milk and cheese and all that. That's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would completely agree. And maybe what's lacking here is a vision, though. So that's why I come back to your utopia. What does it look like? How can a flourishing, prosperous human society coexist with, equally flourishing, not just wolves, but other large carnivores, in fact, a whole rewilded ecosystem? I mean, is this a vision which is even possible to fulfill ever, do you think?
It is. It is very difficult. We have been working, I myself, but that's all the Large Carnivore Initiative, we have been working now for many, many years on this assumption that sooner or later humanity will find a compromise and a more stable and rational approach. And but it's not very easy. Radical views are on both sides, unfortunately. And I don't know which one is worst, whether the side of the haters of the wolf or the side of the lovers of the wolves.
And science can help, hopefully? I mean, do you feel like the research that you and your fellow scientists have done has been useful?
Science is essential to provide data and to build scenarios. You say, if you do this, then this happen. If you do that, then that will happen. But then the decisions, it's politics. It's in the hand of people. It's not in the hand of science. We have been screaming for many. I mean, the last example of the downlisting of the wolf, the Large Carnivore Initiative made a position statement, and we clearly said we are not against the downlisting per se, because actually the downlisting is a signal of success, because it means, you you have saved the animal. But we are against this downlisting because of the way it has been built, the case, and the way it has been supported. For example, using data that European Commission last year used the same data to oppose the downlisting proposed by Switzerland. The same data this year is used by the European Commission to propose the downlisting. It doesn't make sense. It's either good or not, this data. This is a beautiful example of how politics overrun everything if they want.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that the same scientific information has been cherry-picked by different political perspectives. Well, look, I think we should wrap up now, but I'm just so grateful for not just for you coming and speaking with us today on the podcast, but for how all of the work that you've done to support not just wolves, but large carnivores. And I wish you all the success. And I hope wolves continue to flourish and expand, and that people can get used to ways that they can live alongside them, because that's really the only way that I think we can succeed in this kind of conservation effort. So thanks again, Luigi Boitani.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to Saving the World from Bad Ideas, a We Planet podcast. We Planet's a movement of citizens and scientists dedicated to defending the science and solutions we need to save the world. Please do subscribe and share a nice review. It helps us spread the message. We'd also love to hear your feedback and suggestions at our email, podcast@weplanet.org. Please also join our podcast mailing list, and we'll let you know when a new episode drops. Just go to savingtheworldfrombadideas.org or weplanet.org/podcast right now. See you next time.